Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic.com NBA strategy show presented by Prize Picks. I'm Dave Loughran at Laffy_D, joined by Adam Scherer. Ship my money, DFS, little 7-game action. You were right. You said it yesterday. Actually, a nice week of slates. We got 8 yesterday, I think 6 Monday, 7 today. How you feeling, man?
Pretty good. Frustrated by last night. Really annoying slate. Like, had a lot of players do well, had a good amount of Tobias Harris, who was somehow only 3% owned, and then just got burned by Tyus Jones, Marvin Bagley, and Emmanuel Quickly, the 3 probably most obvious plays on the slate.
Yeah. The Tyus Jones one he came back down to earth real quick.
Bagley sucked, Quickly sucked. I mean, like, it's just, I don't know, stuff like that's frustrating because, like, there's nothing you can do about it. Like, you're going to play those guys every single time.
Sure. And then people will look back and say they were bad plays when they're objectively, good plays.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Finished 23rd on DraftKings with Quickly and Luka, who both, just were extremely mediocre.
Yeah, that's rough. Well, we got a 7-gamer today, an interesting one, to say the least. Looking at the slate, you have 7 games, a couple monster spreads as well. Like, you have the OKC Thunder without SGA, without Jalen Williams. They're huge dogs in this spot.
Yeah, I wish we just didn't have that game.
I know. Jake, I'm looking at one. Maybe I transferred it wrong on the run sheet here. Hold on.
Which game?
What's up?
Which game?
The Detroit-Cleveland one. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is.
Again?
No, they're not.
Okay. I'll say it's Miami.
No, we're good. I'm just letting you know. So I'm making sure I think everything else looks right here. Yes, Chicago, OKC, Toronto. Yeah, so that should be Portland 10-point dogs at Boston 231.5 total. Throwing that one out there. But the OKC one, big spread in that one. Chicago 8-point dogs. Let's dive straight into it, though, with Atlanta and Washington. Before we do, though, hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below. All that stuff helps us. Goes a long way. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask. Atone for your sins. Bow down before the YouTube overlords. Let's go. And if you're listening in podcast form, leave a rating, a review. Tell your friends about the pod, about the show. All that good stuff. Subscribe to the pod. Sean V talking about your Orioles, too, huh?
Yeah, Grayson Rodriguez has been looking pretty good.
It's a little, you've been paying attention to spring training?
A little bit. Just I haven't watched any, but try and keep an eye out when the O's are playing, just because they have so many prospects that I am interested in.
Zolo Baxter said Adam almost had a stroke when Dave mentioned the Pistons were on the slate.
I was like, wait, we have OKC and we have Detroit on a back-to-back-to-back. I don't want to do this.
Yeah, OKC back-to-back-to-back. That was just a sidebar issue. We're good to go now. But all right. Tank the Shy Guy. Laffy diving clean into the slate this morning. Oh yeah, it's going to be a good. Listen, don't say that, man, because that'll just sidetrack me even further. And whoever asked, the GI tract is back on track, kind of. We'll see. Rough couple days. Didn't eat for 36 hours. This morning, I toasted some rye, Adam. Fried up 2 eggs, put them on there, a piece of cheese. Nice little breakfast. So we're good to go. Feeling good. Already crushed.
Hopefully we don't see it come back during the show.
Already crushed 3 bottles of water, and they're staying down, so we're in business. Let's talk about the Hawks and the Washington Wizards. No injury news really on either side of this one. The only one is Monte Morris questionable. He's been sidelined. So we can kick it off with Atlanta, take a look at our tools here, ownership projections, boom bust tool, and kind of get some direction early in the day. You got live before lock. You have the deeper dive, all that stuff coming up later. You have the odd shop on the Odd Shopper channel from 4 to 5. Excuse me. That's the egg coming up. So pay attention to that. But let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks here first. On the road, 3.5-point favorites. Trae Young, $8,800 now. DeJounte Murray, $7,700. Obviously, these guys coexist together, but when you get these price points that are insanely far separated and Trae Young starts creeping up to that 10K range, it gets kind of weird, but pretty decent matchup. Trae Young sub 9K today at the point guard position against the Wizards.
Yeah, pretty, relatively cheap price tag for him. You're seeing that come down, and I think it does make him look pretty appealing. Typically, he's in that $9,400, $9,500 range, and he's a fine play when he's there. So getting him down to 8,800 is pretty nice. You should get 34, 35 minutes. Not like it's a bad matchup here. You have a 236.5 total, 3.5 point spread. All of that looks good. Certainly like getting to some Trae Young.
Me too. I think Trae Young looks really good in a spot like this. You're also looking at a nice total, 235.5, one of the higher implied totals on the slate for Atlanta. Do you go further than that though? Like, do we dabble in some DeJounte Murray at a mid 7K price point? Do we go down to some Saddiq Bey, DeAndre Hunter type options? Because I will point out too that this is a kind of weird slate in that there's so much OKC chalk right now, and then it's pretty balanced for the rest of the slate.
Yeah, I think that the way the slate looks right now, you can get to these other guys. Like this slate right now looks different than yesterday. You don't have the Pistons, you don't have Memphis, you don't have equivalents to that outside of OKC to some extent. So DeJounte Murray at 7,700 is still going to look pretty good. Pulling 11% ownership on DraftKings, 11% chance of being optimal. We're seeing Saddiq Bey play a lot of minutes so far. I still am kind of cautious there because we're not seeing that many minutes from Bogdan Bogdanovic. And that just is the kind of thing that I think you could sort of see flip at any given time where suddenly you get a 28 to 30 minute game from Bogdanovic and Bey plays like 24. But we have seen Bey in the closing lineup pretty consistently recently, taking minutes from John Collins, who has, been bad this year. So at 4,800, Bey, you could certainly take some shots on him. Just understand that, he's still pretty risky. I think that there's not a ton of margin for error at that price tag, but he has been playing a lot. You always have upside with Capella, but I think that $6,300 price tag is pretty much correct. You got 34 minutes from him last game. That was a game where Okongwu wasn't in foul trouble. You just got a bunch of minutes from Capella. So nice to see that. Hopefully it happens more often, but so far, since Quinn Snyder's been there, we've seen a pretty similar center rotation to what we were seeing from Nate McMillan, where occasionally you'll get that big playing time game from Capella, but typically you're getting like 27, 28 from him, and then the remaining minutes going to Okongwu. So it certainly makes him a risky play. DeAndre Hunter at 4,500 getting some ownership just really as like a last piece in. You're not going to feel good about him, but he's playing a lot of minutes and he's cheap. Bogdan Bogdanovic not getting ownership. He's really cheap. Kind of interesting to me in larger field tournaments just because, like I said, he is a good shooter. He's a good player. And there's probably just going to be games going forward where you get 28, 29 minutes from him instead of 24. And any game that happens, he's going to end up probably being a good play at 4,400. It's just that he doesn't project that well because at this point you have to assume he's playing, 23, 24 minutes, and that's not likely to get it done.
On the other side of this one, a lot of ownership going to Washington too. Denny Avdia, Kristaps Porzingis, Bradley Beal, all of these guys. And that's with Kyle Kuzma off the injury report. So you saw Kyle Kuzma miss or come back. What was it? He missed the game, came back yesterday, right? Came back yesterday, and they got the 2-point win over Detroit. He returned after, I think, like a 1 or 2 game absence. No, I think he left the game early, right? And then he missed the game. I think that's what it was. I think he left the game early and then missed the game. Besides the point. But Avdia and Porzingis and Beal are all.
He missed the entire Milwaukee game.
Right, but I'm saying he left the game, I think, before that. I could be wrong. I thought he did. I thought he left early. It doesn't matter.
He played 42 minutes against Toronto, and then he didn't play against Milwaukee.
Okay. All right. Then that's it. I swear it was like he left in a with a limp or something. I'm probably thinking of something.
Yeah, maybe he went to the locker room and came back.
Yeah, that could certainly be it. Doesn't matter. Do you like the Porzingis ownership and the Bradley Beal ownership today?
Yeah, I think it looks fine. One thing to keep an eye on here is whether or not Kuzma does end up playing on the back-to-back. We don't have an injury report yet, but we know he was questionable yesterday. If he were to sit, Porzingis and Beal both end up looking better. So does Denny Avdia. But even if Kuzma's in, these guys look fine. Beal only 8,100, played like 37 minutes yesterday. So it's nice seeing his playing time ramp back up. We had seen him sort of just playing like 32 a game for a stretch there, but he's back to playing huge minutes, actually played like 38 yesterday. So at 8,100, he's going to look pretty good. Porzingis at 8,900, no issues with that. Pretty solid matchup against Atlanta as well. Denny Avdia at 4,400 coming off the bench. Only played 20 minutes yesterday. I'm a little surprised he's getting the ownership that he is if Kuzma's in, just because he doesn't have to be in the closing lineup. You could have Gafford out there. You could have Kispert out there. There's a lot of ways this closing lineup can go. If Kuzma's out, it's more likely that Avdia finds his way into the closing lineup. But he is only 4,400. It is just a spot right now, though, where like if Kuzma's in, just from this game, I don't think you should have 22% ownership coming to Avdia and only 5% or 4% coming to Bogdanovic. They're very similar plays to me if Kuzma's in.
It feels that way. I mean, this is one of those games where it makes sense when you look at the rest of the slate where the ownership is. Yeah. If I just like eyeballed it, I probably wouldn't have anticipated that much ownership going to all of these players.
Yeah, it seems kind of strange at first glance, especially with the slates that we've been used to lately and the slates that you're typically going to get this time of year, where you just get entire teams ruled out. That, you know, you have two essentially healthy teams here. So that is weird that you're getting some ownership. One other thing with Washington, right now we have Morris projected in, but I'm not expecting him to play. I thought they already ruled him out, but either way, DeLon Wright, 5,200, certainly a decent value play at point guard as well. Should give you around 30 minutes or so.
Looking at Portland and Boston too. Portland 10-point dogs against the Celtics. Man, this is a weird spot because you still have Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons is out. Yusuf Nurkic is questionable for this one, so maybe he plays. But Matisse Thybulle is one of these guys where you look at him and you go, well, maybe I'll have some because he's playing big minutes, right? 36, then 25 in that one, but 38, 32, 32, 37 minutes 2 days ago against Detroit. Man, just an absolutely dreadful performance. He's not a good per minute guy. If he's not knocking down like a pair of threes or more and getting those stocks, he's essentially useless. We saw a couple of those games where he did. Matter of fact, 3 of them in a row. But man, it's such a volatile play because he has such a narrow window on how to get where he needs to go. He is cheap. He is playing a lot of minutes. It's a bad matchup, but even in bad matchups, you can create some blocks and takeaways. But it's so narrow to find that path to get to the big or the good even Matisse Thybulle game, even with minutes.
Yeah, the minutes should be there. That's not really in question, you know, barring foul trouble, injury, anything like that. But so at 4K, it certainly makes him playable. And we have already seen from the previous game, there's just the demand for guys at that price range. You know, you have a bunch of ownership coming into Avdia. You have DeAndre Hunter getting some ownership. So Thybulle looks fine here, but like you said, it's a very low floor because this guy is not an offensive piece, even without Nurkic and without Simons. You're just not getting much from him. He's played 5 games now without Simons, without Nurkic, and with Dame. He has a 9.1% usage rate. He's averaged 0.67 DraftKings points per minute. Guys like this, when they're relatively popular, are just absolutely terrifying to play.
It's not good. I mean, Cam Reddish too, 40 minutes in regulation last game. That's encouraging to see. 37 before that. He's going to have a higher usage rate than Matisse Thybulle. It's not going to be sky high at all. And again, it is a difficult matchup. His price has come up to 4,700, but I mean, I guess you could at least take solace in knowing that the minutes should be there for Reddish with Simons out again.
Yeah, the playing time's there. He at least has a functional usage rate so far with Portland at 17.5%. That's actually a little bit lower than I expected just based on his performances. It seems like every game that he's like 30-something% owned and I don't play him, he scores 100 fantasy points. But he's averaged 0.83 DraftKings points per minute. We do have Nurkic questionable. If he's back, that will cut into usage for these guys at least a little bit because he's a higher usage player than Drew Eubanks and Trendon Watford. But aside from that, you should still get plenty of minutes from Reddish at 4,700. He's averaged 34 minutes per game in the games he's played with Portland so far. So he's kind of similar to Thybulle, where the minutes are going to be there and you're just hoping for the production. I think he looks a little bit better just because he is a higher usage guy, a better point per minute guy. He at least has some semblance of an offensive game. And he also has shooting guard small forward eligibility on DraftKings. So he's a little bit easier to fit into lineups.
Any interest in Grant or Dame or anybody else here?
That depends in pretty large part on Nurkic. It's a tough matchup either way, and you have relatively expensive price tags on Grant and Lillard. But if Nurkic is back, he just cuts into that usage a little bit more. If he's out, you can still look to these guys in tournaments just because of the ceiling. Lillard in these games that he's played without Simons and without Nurkic, you have 5 full games now, 41.3% usage, 42.6% assist percentage, just insane numbers, very similar to what Luka was doing before Kyrie Irving got there. And if you had gotten Luka at an 11.5 salary, you'd just be playing him all day long in those situations. So if Nurkic is out, I still, especially if the ownership stays relatively low on Dame, I still like getting there in tournaments just for the ceiling. If Nurkic is in, it certainly becomes more difficult. Same goes for Jeremy Grant. He's the clear second option offensively here. The problem is just that Dame does so much offensively that it's still kind of like being a third option. But in those games without Simons and without Nurkic, 24.5% usage rate for Grant, 37.5 minutes per game. There is certainly some upside for him, especially if Nurkic is out.
On the Boston side of things, Jason Tatum pretty popular here. I think that's pretty understandable. You're going up against the bottom 4 defense, not exactly a fast-paced team in Portland, but this game has a total of 231.5, which makes it relatively interesting. Robert Williams is out, by the way, already confirmed. But with Tatum, low 10K price point. Once again, everyone essential from a usage standpoint is going to be active today. But Tatum does look kind of interesting. And I will throw this out there. You mentioned it a little bit, but you have Doncic, Jokic, Lillard, Tatum, and then your Durant's, Booker's, Irving's, Mitchell's, and those type of guys on this slate. Where does Tatum slot in among the high-priced options?
I think he looks pretty good just because we're getting a cheap salary on him at 10-3. Yeah. Right now we have him projected. I think I have the wrong projections up. Okay, there we go. Right now we have him projected to be the 3rd highest scorer behind Luka and Jokic, but you're getting a $1,300 discount on DraftKings. You're getting off of Jokic. You're getting a $1,500 discount off of Luka. So it just makes him look good. He projects similarly to Dame. If Nurkic is in, again, Dame will project higher if Nurkic is out, but $1,200 less expensive than Dame as well. So when you look at the pay up options, you have Luka and Jokic kind of in tier number 1, but they're both really expensive. Then you have Tatum and Lillard very similar, where Tatum's a lot cheaper. Then you get a big drop off to everybody else. But Tatum's the only one of those 4 in those like top groups that is below 11.5. So it just makes him look really easy to get to. In the games that he's played with Jaylen Brown this year, still 1.4 DraftKings points per minute, 37.5 minutes per game. So it's not like he's not good when Brown's out there. He's just better when Brown's not. But Tatum looks very good here. Outside of that, I don't have a ton of interest. I think the low ownership on Jaylen Brown's interesting at 6%. He's 9,100, shooting guard, small forward, but you just know that he can run into those really big games as well, where, Tatum ends up taking a little bit of a backseat. Normally Tatum's going to be the guy, but it happens often enough with Brown that there is a nice ceiling there. 1.2 DraftKings points per minute in the games he's played with Tatum this year. No Robert Williams opens the door for maybe a little bit more playing time or production from Horford. He's 5,500 though, so nothing really standing out there. I don't like a lot here outside of Tatum and then getting to a little bit of Jaylen Brown.
If you're looking at Cleveland and Miami too, you're talking about a 2.5 point spread, 214 total. So just by far, the 14 points lower than anything else on the slate. Is there anything we can salvage here? Maybe like some tournament Donovan Mitchell. He does have a positive leverage score, slightly higher optimal percentage than the ownership today, but that's 6%. Nobody else on this team is above 4%. On the Miami side, you've got, again, like slight positive leverage to somebody like Tyler Hero. It's just one of those games that does not make for good conditions from a DFS perspective.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. There are tournament plays just because you have a lot of talented players in this game. You mentioned Donovan Mitchell. He's a perfect example. 9,300 pulling 4% ownership. It's not an appealing matchup. It's not a spot where you're going out of your way to get to him, but you really only have to go back one game to see the type of upside he gives you. You know, he played 42 minutes in regulation against Boston. That game went to overtime, so he ended up playing 47 minutes, had 40 actual points. Like, Donovan Mitchell can still break a slate at 9,300. Yep. The problem is just you're paying, you know, just from guys we've already talked about, you're paying $500 more for Donovan Mitchell against Miami than you are for Trae Young against Washington. And there's never, you know, any shortage of guard options. So it's a good contrarian play. Same goes for Darius Garland. Same goes for Allen and Mobley. Like, these guys are all solid contrarian plays because they're good fantasy producers at very low ownership. But the reason the ownership's so low and the reason that you're not pointing to one of these guys and saying like, oh yeah, my night's going to revolve around Donovan Mitchell, is just that they are correctly priced and they are in a pretty difficult matchup against Miami.
So does Miami feel the same way then?
Yeah, entirely. Bam and Hero both pulling 5 to 6% ownership there. They lead the team. They both have 5 to 6% chances of being optimal as well. So low probability plays, low ownership. You know, it's a decent way to differentiate. Tyler Hero should play big minutes. So should Bam. Bam center only on DraftKings, so that makes it a little bit tougher, but he is only 8K. But, you know, good defensive team in Cleveland. Not going to be a fast-paced game. There's just nothing that stands out here as a great play. It's more so just mixing in good players at low ownership is fine, but nothing that I expect to build around.
Okay. You could build around getting $100 from Prize Picks and a free month of Stokastic plus Platinum, though. I'll tell you that much. No, in all seriousness, you're talking about, first of all, if you don't use the link, we can't track you. I know we get emails sometimes and DM. If you use the link, you get your free month of Stokastic plus Platinum, $120 value. You're getting $100 first match deposit, 100% up to $100, meaning you go over to Prize Picks using the link. You you deposit $10, your account's going to say 20. You deposit 50, it's going to say 100. You want to go with the full 100, it's going to say 200. It's a huge bonus, and you're getting every tool on our site over at Stokastic.com for free for the entirety of the month. That's ownership, top stack tool for all of the sports, boom bust tool, player projections, all of the projected stats and data, the lineup generator, everything from top to bottom. Oh, and the premium Discord, great community over there as well. All of that for free. And you're playing on a great place like Prize Picks. Josh is throwing out the videos on the Odd Shopper channel every day. You can follow them. You've got all the tools that you need from a player prop perspective over at Stokastic when you're getting the free month in order to take advantage of that and win money. And all you're doing is taking player props, putting them into a lineup. Other books you might consider that a parlay. The difference here, though, there's no juice. You're just doing over or the under. So like you could see a spot, right? Kyrie Irving, 25.5 points. That might be the same on DraftKings, except on DraftKings, it might be minus 140 to the over. On Prize Picks, there is no juice on any of that. Yesterday, they had the Taco Tuesday on Mikal Bridges and Kyrie Irving, where they drop it down considerably from like 25.5 to 21.5. They both hit. You get free squares a lot. If you hit 5 of 5, say you do a 5-player flex play, you 10X. If you hit 4, though, unlike a traditional book, you don't lose everything. You still 2X your entry. You make money back still on a 3 of 5. That's a huge way to sustain your bankroll and to put yourself in a spot to hit big. If you go 6 play, you 25X if you hit all 6. So check it out. You can mix as many sports as you want. If you're confident in a bunch of different sports, you can throw them all into the same lineup. You're getting $100 first match deposit bonus. And more than anything, dude, you're getting a free month. Like we charge $120 for that everywhere else. The hope here is that you sign up, you get your free month, you start winning money, whether you're using it on low stakes, it doesn't matter. Quarter arcade, the $1 entries, 20, doesn't matter. Hope is that you're winning and you start making money and you stick around. You don't have to have the top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more get into the Hall of Fame just so you can win a free month. You just sign up at Prize Picks if it's available to you. And if betting's not available in your state, listen, no better way to scratch that itch than to check out Prize Picks. It's blowing up for a very good reason. So check it out. Link is in the description and in chat. Free month of everything that we have on the site, including the Discord, and you're getting the $100 first match deposit bonus. So check it out. Check it out. All right. Let's keep this one. What's that coffee mug you have?
My dad brought it back from England.
Get rid of it. I'm just kidding. All right. Sure, they're great people. So let's keep moving here.
They probably suck like everybody else.
Yeah, we all suck, dude. Everybody sucks. I'm with you. Dallas, 1.5-point favorites, 233 total. By the way, it's hilarious. Like he went to England and he brought back a mug.
Well, normally my dad and my sister get me shot glasses when they go somewhere.
See, that's cool.
Or coffee mugs. Like he's been more than once. He used to go there for work a lot. So like he'd already gotten me shot glasses. So then he got me a coffee mug.
Okay. All right. I say, like, nothing screams England like a mug.
Yeah, no, things to drink out of are typically the souvenirs that my family gets me.
Fair enough. Reggie Bullock, questionable. I don't think he plays today. They're on the second of a back-to-back. That would seem unlikely. I actually, before we get to Doncic and Kyrie Irving, I wanted to ask you about a couple things. One, we have Christian Wood at 36%. We have Justin Holiday, who is a atrocious per minute player. I'm not saying he isn't. We have him at 0.1% here. Can you square that, just given that Holiday did end up playing? Like Holiday ended up, I know that Hardaway started the second half of last game with Bullock out, but Holiday ended up playing 31 minutes. Yeah. Or what did he play? Yeah. 31 minutes yesterday off the bench. And that was all those minutes essentially after Bullock went down.
Yeah, I mean, he played a lot in the first half as well. Like you said, Bullock had gone down, but
Bullock went down after 8 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. Holiday was the first guy off the bench before Bullock went down. And then you just had, more solidified minutes from him without Bullock. So yeah, it is interesting that he's not getting any ownership right now. That probably does change a bit. Like he sucks from a fantasy standpoint. There's not a lot available when you're playing with Luka and Kyrie either. But the thing that makes me think the ownership comes up, at least until we get, injury news that we're not expecting, is that you have a 4K Matisse Thybulle pulling almost 20% ownership. You have Sadiq Bey at nearly 5K pulling 15% ownership. You have Denny Avdia at 22% ownership. You have Cam Reddish pulling 20% ownership. There's a need for cheap wings. And if you have the potential to get 30 minutes from Justin Holiday, he's going to get at least some ownership. I don't want this to be confused as advocating for him as a great player or something, because the dude sucks from a fantasy standpoint, but he's 3,200. He's going to get some ownership. That's going to change. The minutes are likely to be there if Bullock doesn't play.
Yeah, and I just meant because he's essentially minimum salary. Right. Like it's not a good spot. He's not a good per minute player, like you said, and he's not going to have a lot of opportunities. But
right. Josh Green is 3,700 pulling 14%. There's not that much of a difference between Josh Green and Justin Holiday if Bullock's out.
Right. What about Christian Wood getting 36% here? Is this because we're projecting Maxi Kleber out in the second of a back-to-back?
I guess, but I still don't know what the deal is. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like Christian Wood, even with Kleber out previously, wasn't playing a lot. If you go back a couple of games ago against, I think it was Phoenix. Yeah, Kleber didn't play against Phoenix. You got 21 and a half minutes from Christian Wood. He's a good point per minute guy. The price tag is down to 4,900 on DraftKings. He does only have center eligibility though. So kind of surprised where we have him projected. We also have him projected to play 25 minutes. I don't totally know where that's coming from. Maybe we're thinking Bullock being out has some impact there, but I don't know. I don't really expect them to play Christian Wood alongside Dwight Powell. I think you just get more minutes from Holiday, Hardaway, other random shitty wings that the Mavs have. Like they have plenty of random wings. They have Ntilikina, they have Pinson, like they have Markieff Morris. They have plenty of guys they can go to here where they don't need to just run Christian Wood out there for a bunch of minutes at the 4. So I'm not totally on board with that. I agree that he has a ceiling because I could be wrong. And the minute he starts playing power forward minutes and gets to 25, 26 minutes, you're going to be like, shit, I wish I had him at 4,900, but I don't really know how that's the assumption. So I don't expect that level of ownership. I don't expect that optimal percentage to hold there either.
Yeah, seems unlikely. So I guess the question now is, assuming Bullock's out, what do you think? And I know it's early in the day, but like, what would you anticipate? Let's assume that Kleber and Bullock are out on the second leg of a back-to-back. Bullock getting hurt, of course, yesterday in the first. What do we anticipate the rotations looking like? Like forget about Luka and Irving and stuff. We know that Hardaway probably gets, 30, 32 minutes. Josh Green gets his run. What do the rest of the minutes look like if you had to guess now?
I think it probably looks similar to yesterday, except assuming that Maxi Kleber's not playing, you're probably getting like Ntilikina in the rotation. He played 2.5 minutes yesterday. I would think he plays a little bit more. Hardaway played 33 minutes. Maybe he plays a little bit more, but probably not that much more. Josh Green only played 27 minutes yesterday. He's another one that could certainly just be north of 30 here and soak up some of those Maxi Kleber minutes. Powell played 19.5 yesterday. He probably gets back to like 24 minutes. So I think you just see like several guys that aren't very good from a fantasy standpoint pick up more playing time. And one other thing to say about Christian Wood, I do think he has a high ceiling here because there is uncertainty in exactly how many minutes he's going to play. He is cheap. He is a good point per minute guy. He's one of those guys that we talk about a lot where you really just need to get lucky in one way. You just need him to get more minutes than I'm expecting. The production is pretty much always going to be there. My issue with Christian Wood right now is that we're just projecting everybody to assume that he's playing 25 minutes when I don't think that's the right assumption. If that ownership comes down and you're talking about, like a 8, 9, 10% owned Christian Wood at 4,900, I am interested just because there is a path to minutes and he is a good point per minute guy. My issue right now is just with him being 36% owned.
Right. It's not, look, almost all of his minutes come with at least one of Kyrie and Doncic off the floor. So
they just haven't been playing him alongside Powell is the issue for me.
Right.
Which it's twofold. They haven't been playing him alongside Powell, and Jason Kidd is clearly just not interested in Christian Wood. It's not like Dwight Powell is some monster that prevents Christian Wood from playing. Jason Kidd is choosing not to play Christian Wood a lot of minutes. So that's the other thing is, it's not like Jason Kidd's been waiting for some opportunity to unleash Christian Wood, and now he has it without Maxey and probably Bullock. He clearly is not a fan of the guy. So the minutes are there if Jason Kidd wants to give them to him. I'm just not convinced he does.
Yeah. They played they played 1 minute together yesterday.
Right.
Not good. Anything else? Do you want to get into Luka and Kyrie here a little bit? Or, specifically Luka?
Yeah, they're both obviously good plays. They always are. You're at around a fantasy 1.5 per minute for Luka since Kyrie joined the team. Kyrie's around 1.3 DraftKings points per minute. They're both playing big minutes. I think it's interesting right now that Kyrie's not getting any ownership at 9,400. I guess, to some extent, it's probably because of the Trae Young price tag, but I find him pretty interesting at low ownership at 9,400. Luka at 11.8. If you get there, great. We haven't talked about a ton of cheap value so far today. We do have OKC that we'll get to. But I think Luka's a little bit overpriced for Kyrie being there, but you do still have the very high ceiling that comes with being Luka.
What do you like from the Pels side of this one with Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum? There's no injury news to speak of, right? Like
Nance is still out.
What's up?
Nance is still out.
Right. But I'm saying that he's been out is kind of what I meant. Nothing, because he's been out for like 2 weeks. But essentially it's Zion, Nance out, and that's pretty much Alvarado out, but he's been out as well. Still getting some love going to Ingram and McCollum today against the Mavs.
Yeah, I actually really like this team because Dallas cannot defend at all. Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum, both very reasonable.
What happened to them, by the way? Like, I know Kyrie comes over, but they were a good defensive team not long ago. I guess Finney Smith is gone now, too.
They were bad before the trade. They're just worse now.
I know, right? But it's odd.
No, they were bad before the trade. They were like, I think, bottom 10 before the trade and then just got worse.
No, I know, but last year they weren't.
Oh, yeah. I don't even remember who was on their team.
And I'm saying they weren't all that different last year to the beginning of this year. That's kind of what I was saying.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And like Kleber's been out a lot. He matters.
True.
Trading Finney Smith certainly didn't help. But for the Pels, like the price tags on Ingram and McCollum both look good. These guys are playing big minutes. We know that they're very productive, especially without Zion. So they both, not a lot to say about them. They just look like good plays. I'm really interested in the lack of ownership coming into the wings, though, because we've talked about all of these pretty mediocre wing plays that are getting ownership. And then you have Herb Jones at 5,100 pulling 6% ownership. Trey Murphy at 5,300 with shooting guard and small forward eligibility pulling 3% ownership. You do have Josh Richardson back, so you're probably going to get less playing time than you did last game where Murphy played 37 and Jones played 37. But even getting 30 to 32 minutes from those guys, they're going to look interesting to me if they are this low owned. Josh Richardson at 4,800 certainly has a path to a good game as well. So I don't think that there's one wing on the Pels, one of these cheap value wings on the Pels that looks great and like a lot better than the rest. But I'm just really interested if you're going to get 1/3 the ownership going to these guys that you are to guys like Matisse Thybulle and Cam Reddish, who, also pretty much suck. And then Joval at 6,900, also pulling 3% ownership. That's really interesting to me as well. The price tags come up a little bit to 6,900, but no Larry Nance. Joval's averaged about 28 minutes per game in games that Nance hasn't played this year, compared to 24 minutes in the games that he has. He played 32 minutes against Sacramento last game. It's a soft Dallas front court. I think Joval should probably be a little bit more popular here.
Okay. Yeah, Joval's the guy that can make or break a slate for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, the price tag is getting up there. Like, there's not a lot of margin for error now. He doesn't project as a great value or anything, but like the guy can just easily go for 40 plus fantasy points if he gets 30 plus minutes.
Yeah, at that price point, if I told you he was playing 30 plus minutes locked in, you'd be 100% fine with that every single night.
Right.
At that price point. We still don't necessarily know, but he has played 31, 29, 32, then there's 23 and 32. But he got hurt in that game, right? The one where he played only 23, I thought. Maybe not.
I don't remember. It was I didn't watch the game, and it was hard to tell based on the rotation because they just closed with a small lineup.
Yeah.
Or with Hayes, one of the two. I don't remember.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. But that's a good call. I like that. All right, let's keep it going. Chicago and Denver. Then we'll get to this OKC and Phoenix game, which is going to be wild.
I'm dreading that one.
I know. It's Ousmane Dieng time, dude. I'm telling you. I mentioned him yesterday to you. This is now the time. This is the time. But we'll get there. With Chicago, I don't think we have a whole lot to get to. I mean, the highest owned Chicago Bull right now is Kobe White at 9%, Vooch at 8%. He is sub 8K. Like, Vooch does still have the ceiling in the repertoire. We've seen that. Going up against Denver, though. So I guess ultimately, I think you would agree there are no real priorities on this slate. Are there any guys you want to get in the tournaments? Just like, it's probably good to have some Vooch at 7,900 or maybe some DeRozan at 8,200. God, DeRozan, it's a tough spot to get to right now.
Yeah, this team is similar, I think, to like what we talked about with Cleveland, what we talked about with Miami. At their respective salaries, there's nothing that stands out as somebody you're really building around. Of the three main guys, Vooch is pulling the most ownership at 8%, and that's fine. He's only 7,900. But these are still really good point per minute guys. DeRozan's been playing poorly, like you said, but still getting big minutes, still clearly has a track record of being really good. Vooch coming off of a game, he played 36 minutes. LaVine coming off of a game that he played 38. The ceiling is there for these guys, and they are going a little bit under-owned, but it's under-owned in the sense where, like, right now on DraftKings, we have LaVine projected for 1.5% ownership with a 4.5% chance of being optimal. So low probability play, but a good spot to differentiate. You have 6 chalky guys in your lineup, throw Zach LaVine in, and you're good, basically. Same goes for DeRozan, same to an extent goes for Vooch. So the ceiling is there. There's a decent chance one of these guys pops off and has a big game, but on average, they just project they're pretty much correctly priced, but there is certainly plenty of upside here. Vooch, I think, would be the one I get to first, LaVine second, DeRozan third. If you want to throw some darts at the cheap guards, 9% ownership coming into Kobe White, 5% coming into Alex Caruso at 3,400. Either of those are fine. You had Caruso move back into the starting lineup last game. Assuming he starts, he's probably playing 26, 27 minutes. Kobe White probably playing around 20 off the bench. Patrick Beverley's been starting and playing big minutes. It's kind of interesting to me that Beverley at 4,100 is getting 1% ownership while Kobe White gets 9 at 3,600. Like, I think they're pretty similar plays in that they are cheap, so there is some upside, but they also are not very good from a fantasy standpoint, so they're not all that appealing. But I think, if you mix in any one of those three, you're fine, but certainly nothing that I'm planning to get a lot of.
And by the way, by playing poorly, it's not even like it's not even like DeRozan is shooting poorly recently. It's just you haven't seen insane volume. He has 2 games of his last 4 where he's played 35 and 36 minutes and has 0 rebounds in both of them. Like, you're just not seeing the peripheral numbers. He's not a guy that's going to get you big numbers from beyond the 3-point line. He doesn't get to the free throw line at an insane clip. So it's like when he has those games where he goes for 31 actual points, you're seeing spots where, he might not reach 45 fantasy points. And that makes it difficult. Like, this isn't to say he's as scoring dependent as some of the other players we'll talk about on any given slate, but recently the peripherals have been what's lacking, and also just the lack of those games where he gets off 25 field goal attempts. It's not that he hasn't been efficient even.
Right. Yeah. If you look at his last 10 games versus the season, for the season, he's averaged 1.12 DraftKings points per minute on a 28% usage rate, 7% rebounding percentage, 22% assist percentage. His last 30 days, which is his last 10 games, 25.4% usage. So that's down like 2.5 points, 4.3% rebounding percentage. So that's down like 2.5 points, 22.5% assist percentage. So that's in line, 0.92 DraftKings points per minute. So 0.2 of a fantasy point worse per minute in his last 10 games than the season. And the usage is down and the rebounding's down. So it could be a small sample size thing. It could also just be that he's playing banged up. It could be some sort of change. Levine's been playing really well. That can certainly affect your usage. The rebounding, I always get a little concerned when you see something like that, because it could be a design thing where, like, he's just by design not getting as many rebounds. I do think it's likely you see it come back to where it was, because it's not like he was a great rebounder anyway. He's just better than he is.
Sure. I mean, and you know what else? Maybe it's also the fact that he's averaging the 10th most minutes in the league, and he's basically my age.
Yeah, I'll say he's not exactly young.
No, I'm born in 87. DeRozan's born in 89. Hey, this guy's been in the league for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I said basically, close. In basketball terms these days, that age, you just round down or up. Like when you're that age, not a lot of guys out there with the same usage and experience that he has at 33 years old, playing that many minutes. Who knows? Maybe he's just wearing down a little bit. I think sometimes you see that reflected in rebound rates and stuff like that too. But
yeah. I mean, basically the way I view it is there's probably something to it. Whether, like you said, he's tired, he's worn down, he's playing through an injury, whatever. It doesn't make me think that like he's a bad play in DFS at no ownership at 8,200. Like I'd be a lot more concerned about trying to guess or figure out what's going on if we were talking about like, a $7,200 DeRozan pulling 30% ownership. At 1%, like you can tell me exactly what's wrong. You can say like he feels like shit, his legs are shot, and I'd still be like, yeah, but he's still not getting any ownership, so I'm kind of interested. So that's kind of the way I view it here is there's probably something to it, but he's still 1% owned, so I'm kind of interested. I do prefer finding $400 for Zach LaVine, though.
Right. Yeah, I get that. Just throwing it out there. Not everybody's LeBron James, Not everybody can keep it up for so long. But listen, DeRozan's been able to do it for a long time himself. Let's talk about Denver, though. KCP, we got at 19%. Just looking at this for the first time. Jokic, 15%.
Hang on, one other thing. I just looked while you were talking. In the last 10 games, LaVine's played with DeRozan, 31% usage rate. Overall, with DeRozan this year, 28% usage rate. So pretty easy to figure out where that 2.5 to 3% usage went from DeRozan.
Yeah, it makes sense. LaVine's younger now.
LaVine was also banged up a bit at the beginning of the season, so it kind of makes sense. Like it makes sense if you're seeing DeRozan wear down a little bit and LaVine like finally hit his stride.
Yeah, true. Yeah, like nearing the end of the season makes sense. What about on the Denver side? Michael Porter Jr. is the only thing. Yeah, he's probable, so expect him to play. Everybody's getting a little bit of love here, from Brown to Jamal Murray to Nikola Jokic to KCP. Does anyone jump off the page at you?
No, it's just the team that I think is, like you said, four players on this team are pulling 13 to 20% ownership, and I don't really have any problem with that. Jokic clearly always going to be a good play. He's pulling 15% ownership. We don't have quite the opportunity cost at center today that we typically do. We have some good center plays for sure, but you're not seeing quite the same level of opportunity cost. So maybe a little bit easier to get to Jokic. On the other hand, you don't have a ton of good value so far, but Jokic certainly going to look good if you can get there. Jamal Murray at 7,800 is fine. You know the type of upside that he gives you. He's playing big minutes. Recently, they haven't been playing him with the second unit. I don't know why Michael Malone does things that he does sometimes, but when Murray plays with the second unit, he's a much, much better DFS option than when he doesn't. It varies by game. Last game, we didn't see it, though, so that's not ideal, but still a nice ceiling for him. Then you're getting some ownership coming into the value guys because, again, we just don't have a ton of value right now. KCP at 3,900 pulling nearly 20% ownership. Bruce Brown at 3,800 pulling 13.5%. Neither one of those are exciting, but KCP played 35.5 minutes last game. He did get run with the second unit, so maybe Malone's just trying to get a better defensive unit out there and playing KCP instead of Murray. Bruce Brown played 20 minutes off the bench. Could play more if anybody gets in foul trouble, you're getting more minutes from Bruce Brown. So those guys look okay as values, but also as other stuff opens up, they're probably going to disappear. One spot that's interesting to me, though, is that Aaron Gordon's not getting like any ownership at 6,400, only pulling 5% ownership, likely giving you 30 to 32 minutes. Good point per minute guy, good enough point per minute guy, has a ceiling just because we have seen him take a step forward offensively this year. So I'm interested that he's not getting ownership. Kind of interested that Porter's not getting any ownership as well. He played 32 minutes last game. We know if he gets hot from three, he can give you some big games. So I'd like getting to Denver here, whether, it's the obvious pieces in Jokic and Murray, using KCP and Brown as some cheap value, or using contrarian pieces like Gordon and Michael Porter.
Ready to talk about OKC?
My internet's lagging. I think I need to go.
Yeah. Hey, appreciate you guys getting us north of 100 likes already. Only asked once earlier in the show. Appreciate it. We got almost 600 people watching. By the way, tell you guys every show, we've only been doing this for a little while now, but if you go into the description, or Jacob can throw this in the chat too, 50% off any subscription that we have, okay? Whether it's weekly or monthly, everything we've got, you're getting 50% right off of the top. So let's say you're not in a state where Prize Picks is eligible. Like for me, right? Pennsylvania, can't play Prize Picks. Play a bunch of those, can legally bet, can't play Prize Picks. So I can't take advantage of the free month. Plenty of you, or you're already on Prize Picks and you want to get back over at Stokastic, you want to check it out for the first time, can't take advantage of that either. 50% off. Or let's say, all right, you wanted to do 50% off the NBA weekly, monthly, or you wanted to do every sport for the week or the month, whatever you want to do, you can check it out. Click in the link. It'll take you to the page. Simple as that. But if you said, you know what, I just want to check out the lineup generator. I saw the screenshots coming in. I saw the big wins coming in. I saw how easy it is to make money using that and to make good lineups using that without having to do much, because over at Stokastic, they're already running thousands of lineups and simulations and tossing all of the bad ones in the garbage and just giving you the top 1% ones that are running in the sims and coming up in top 1% optimal percentage. You're getting optimal. You're getting lineup ownership percentage. You can lock players in. You can swap players. You can do all of that stuff. And you can do so for less than $4.50 for the first week. So if you're looking to get into that, saying, all right, I sometimes don't have time to spend all my day researching. I can't always watch the deeper dive or live before lock. I can't always do that, but I want to make, somebody said the other day in chat, they're like, I use lineup generator at work when I have quick breaks. Who knows if they're actually breaking, but like I use it at work because it gets me the lineups I'm looking for. I can filter out the ones I want, discard the ones I don't want, upload it to CSV, or you can do it on your phone. It's all optimized for your phone as well. That link is down there. So 50% off any type of subscription you want, or right below that, 50% off the lineup generator. That's $4.48 a week. And you think of it this way, like if you're playing $2, $5 a day, it's well worth it. You have one decent day and there you go. You're $4.50 paid off and you keep using the lineup generator because you're winning money. So check it out. Both of them down there, however you want to play it, and in the description. Jacob, if you could throw lineup generator in there as well, that'd be great. All right, OKC.
I just to avoid talking about OKC, I just started digging in the stats while you were talking. Trae Young, second in the league this year in pick and roll possessions. Washington, most points per possession allowed in the pick and roll this year.
Ooh, man, you and I used to dive deep into play type data on these shows.
Yeah, I thought about it when we were talking because I was pretty sure Washington wasn't good, and I knew Trae Young is always a league leader, but I didn't know where they stood. So yeah, I pulled that up just to put off OKC for a little bit more. But interesting, makes like it's one of those things where Trae Young was going to look good anyway, and it wouldn't have changed. I wouldn't have been like, oh wow, I thought Trae Young was bad. Now I think he's great, but certainly just kind of reinforces Trae Young looking really good.
Yeah, I love the play type data, particularly for the pick and roll ball handlers and roll men and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like it's never something that like, again, it's not changing a ton, but it's always nice. I always like it when it's a player that already looked good for me, and then it's like clarifying that it's always a little bit scary when it's like, oh, like he projects really well, except for this team is insanely good at defending the thing that he's good at.
Yeah, exactly. It just cements it really. And there are like, sometimes people go way too deep into like defense versus position and stuff like that. But there's no question that type of play type data, certain teams just can't defend the pick and roll, right?
Yeah, we talked about it before when like defense versus position comes up. If you're going to go down that path and like actually make plays by that, you should be looking at play type data, not positions.
By the way, if you guys are looking to do that, NBA.com stats, of all of the sports, there's no better site, like free site, you would agree with this, that has like just all of the abundance of stats. Like NFL's horrible for that. NBA.com, you can go and take a little bit of time to just sift through this because, Adam, I think you'd agree there is a bit of a learning curve with it, with the NBA stats. Like there's definitely a bit of a learning curve. But
yeah, there's a lot of information, which, like you said, is weird for a free league run site.
Very weird. Tracking data like rebound chances, potential assists. I love that stuff. But if you go to players and then you go to play type, you can go in the play type data by player and by team and really try and exploit some of those mismatches. It's if you have some time, pick through it. It's a lot of fun to look at. All right. OKC. No SGA, no Jalen Williams. Giddey's super popular. Isaiah Joe, very popular. And let's not bury the lead here. They're also 13-point dogs in this game against the Phoenix Suns, 233.5 total. I mean, feel free to start wherever you'd like. I think we have to start with Giddey. But as ugly as it feels, we're going to have to get into the Aaron Wiggins here. We're going to have to get into the Ousmane Diangs and even the Dario Saric type plays.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Williams being out along with SGA is a pretty big deal because in games where SGA hasn't played, Jalen Williams has like a 23.5% usage rate. So you're taking him out as well. That's going to open up other stuff. So Josh Giddey, like you said, leading the way at 41.5% ownership. This is a really scary play to me because it's not like he's cheap. He's underpriced if things go perfectly, but it's not like he's cheap. He's still 7,600. He can fail. He's averaged about 3.5 minutes per game less with SGA out this year, in large part just because they're going to get blown out more frequently. You also, I think it was an SGA-less game when you randomly got the 20-minute game from Giddey. You're not expecting, that sort of rotation. Yeah, you're not expecting that sort of rotation, but they are clearly at blowout risk here. So, it's not, you're not just not playing Josh Giddey because it's a 13-point spread. In 8 games without SGA this year, Giddey's averaged 1.3 DraftKings points per minute in 27.5 minutes per game. Like that's still very, very good. And it gives you a very high ceiling. He's just risky because 1, he's on OKC, and 2, this game could just get out of hand very quickly to where, he doesn't play as many minutes, but if this game is competitive into the fourth quarter, he looks like a really good play. Beyond him, you don't know exactly how the minutes are going to go, but my assumption is Isaiah Joe moves into the starting lineup at 4,400. He is going to project as a good value. The minutes are always going to be somewhat volatile because just because you start the game doesn't mean you're starting the second half. But he's not a bad point per minute guy, very efficient 3-point shooter. He's pulling 36% ownership. Aaron Wiggins at 3,500, pulling a bunch of ownership. Not a good point per minute guy, but we've already talked about how valuable finding cheap wings is on this slate. And Aaron Wiggins at 3,500, likely playing 28 minutes or so, is going to project pretty well. Lou Dort, 6K, so he's tough to get to. You probably do see a bump in usage for him, but not an efficient scorer, and he's expensive, so more of a contrarian tournament play. Ousmane Dieng at 3,200, 25% ownership, no problems with that. Jalen Williams at 3,700, somewhat interesting, pulling 13% ownership. You don't have as much opportunity cost at center today, so you can get there a little bit. And then also, and this goes to Dario Saric as well, Mark Daigneault had talked yesterday before their game about how they had been using and planning to use the other Jalen Williams at the 5 in upcoming games. So that makes me think that there are minutes available because there's no Kenrich Williams. So there should be more minutes available for Jalen Williams and Dario Saric here. They're both cheap. Saric has power forward eligibility as well. Then you get into like the more dart throw type guys where they're even more so than these guys already were. Trey Mann is 3K flat. He hasn't been a big part of the rotation recently. He did not play at all yesterday, but with no SGA, like, does it shock you if he just plays 20 minutes and ends up being good at 3K? Jeremiah Robinson Earl, 3K flat, didn't play yesterday, but they are shorthanded at center. It is OKC. Like, you shouldn't be shocked if he just gets enough minutes to matter today. So, neither of those are guys you're going to with much frequency. Lindy Waters was in the rotation yesterday. He's 3K flat, but he only played 6 minutes. Like, those guys are all really risky. But when you consider that OKC is just going to change their rotation constantly anyway, and then now we're in a situation with no SGA and no Jalen Williams and no Kenrich Williams, where we don't really have any blueprint of what even to expect it to look like. If any of these guys have good games and get more minutes than you're expecting, you shouldn't be surprised. But I think all you can really do is assume that the guys that typically have been getting minutes recently are going to get the minutes. Just understand there's a lot more volatility here than there are in other spots. Like yesterday, for example, with Detroit, when they were shorthanded, you could be pretty confident that guys like Jared Rhoden and Buddy Boeheim weren't playing substantial minutes. With OKC, you can't be as confident because they just change that shit up every day anyway, and now they're even more shorthanded than usual.
And to add another wrinkle to this, like, there is legitimate blowout risk in this game as well.
Right.
So which one of these bench role players that's already in the rotation potentially gets those additional minutes in blowout run?
Right. Like, we talk about it a lot, not trying to predict blowouts, because like people, for whatever reason, always want to like land on the guy that gets to play all 12 minutes in the fourth quarter, but didn't play at all in the first 3.
Exactly. But I'm not talking about those guys.
Right. It's a little bit different here because like somebody like Ousmane Dieng, right? He played 19 minutes yesterday in a competitive game. Let's say yesterday's game blew out. The 19 minutes, so he subbed out with 7 minutes and 43 seconds to go in the fourth.
26 minutes.
That 19 minutes probably becomes 26 minutes if that game was a blowout. Guys like that, so it's all a mess. There's going to be very good plays from this team. Your guess is as good as mine and who they are. I'm pretty much assuming that the guys that have been in the rotation, so Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, Ousmane Dieng, Jalen Williams, Dario Saric, my assumption is these are the best values. But if it goes sideways and it turns out to be a Trey Mann game or a Jeremiah Robinson Earl game, it's OKC. You kind of just have to chalk it up to that's what they do.
Nice breakdown, dude. Not easy to do with this team. Phoenix. All right. So we have DeAndre Ayton at 14.4% ownership, highest on the team. I do just want to throw this out there because, KD has played 3 games with the Suns alongside Booker and Ayton. The usage over these 3 games, I understand it's only 3 games, but it's all we have to go by. Booker's at 34% usage. Durant is at 26%. DeAndre Ayton's usage has come down to 13% in those 3 games that he has played alongside Booker and Durant. I'm not saying that it's going to continue hovering around 13%, but man, you want to talk about the lion's share of opportunity. Chris Paul's at 14%. The lion's share of opportunities going to Booker and Kevin Durant. Booker has truly thrived since Kevin Durant. Again, 3 games, sure, but 35%, 34% usage rate, 38% assist rate, actually higher than Chris Paul. So I would assume that begins to balance out a little bit. 1.6 DraftKings points per minute. Meanwhile, DeAndre Ayton really has taken a bit of a backseat role. How much will we find a balance here? I'm sure more than we have right now. But DeAndre Ayton, no question, has taken a hit since Kevin Durant has entered the starting lineup.
Yeah. I still like Ayton here. His salary's come all the way down to 7,400, and he still averaged 0.95 DraftKings points per minute in these games with Durant and Booker on like a 12.5, 13% usage rate. That number is probably going to go up. It's not going to get back to where it was before Durant came, obviously, but I still think you're looking at, north of a fantasy point per minute from Ayton in a pretty solid spot here. He's pulling 14% ownership. I don't have any problems with that. The Durant and Booker pieces, though, at low ownership are really interesting because, like you said, for one, Devin Booker hasn't lost usage so far. They're staggering his minutes with Durant, as you would expect. So you're getting plenty of minutes from Booker where Kevin Durant's not on the floor and it's irrelevant. But you're still getting big minutes as well. And when he is on the floor with Durant, you should see increased efficiency. You're just going to get better looks from Devin Booker because teams have to defend Kevin Durant now. So in those minutes where they're together, I do expect Booker to take a hit in usage, but I expect his efficiency to come up. So I still think he's a very, very high upside play. And then the other piece is we have a $9,800 Kevin Durant pulling 6% ownership. He's quote unquote on a minutes limit for the foreseeable future, but he played 40.4 minutes against Dallas last game. So I don't think he's on a minutes limit. Like $9,800 Kevin Durant against OKC, it is there is obviously blowout risk. There's no guarantee you're getting fourth quarter minutes here. But he's got, he's averaged nearly 1.4 DraftKings points per minute in these first three games. And that's only with 25.5% usage. That number probably comes up a bit at the expense of Booker as we get a larger sample. The ceiling on these guys, given the, at low ownership, is pretty appealing to me. I understand why they are low owned, just because they're really difficult to project because it's one of the most difficult things, I think, when players switch teams like this. It's not that hard to estimate what usage is going to end up looking like if you just kind of go back and look at, what players have looked like in the most comparable situations you can find. It can be more difficult, though, to figure out exactly how you expect efficiency to look because we've never seen Devin Booker playing with Kevin Durant and Chris Paul at the same time and what that does to defenses. So it's really hard to know exactly how efficient we can expect Booker to be. And that does make me think that there's a really high ceiling here because there's a decent chance that he is just going under projected right now. And you look back in 2-3 weeks and go like, in the same spot, you would just have a 47-point projection on Booker instead of 44. So I think that they're interesting from an upside standpoint. From a median standpoint right now, with the ability we have to project them, I do understand why they're low owned, but I like the ceilings. I still like Ayton here, like I said, just because I do think that usage rate comes up a bit. The playing time's still there, the rebounding is still there, and it's a nice matchup for him. Outside of that, I have a hard time getting to much of anything. If you want to take some shots on Josh Okogie, that's fine. You need him to knock down his corner threes, but $5,100 Ford, not getting a lot of ownership. I don't think he's, a 3-1 dog against Cam Reddish, for example, but Ayton, I think, is the easiest guy to get to. Happy with whatever Durant and Booker I can get to. And then, Okogie, Paul, I guess, are like the third tier guys for me.
And to your point, Kevin Durant, back when he was playing with Irving, go look at his price, high 10K. He was in the 11Ks for most of the beginning of the season.
Right.
He played not only 40 minutes, him and Booker played 40 minutes in regulation.
That game didn't go to overtime. Durant played the entire fourth. Durant played 10 minutes in the third, played the entire fourth. Like, that is not a rotation of somebody that they are concerned at all about limiting him.
Not one bit. Yeah.
Like, this isn't even like the bullshit Darius Garland thing from earlier in the year where they were like, well, he's going to play shorter stints. So they played him, like 9, 9, 9, and 9 minutes, whatever they did. Like they played him for 22 of 20 or 22 of 24 minutes in the second half. Like, there was no shortening his stints. There was no limiting his minutes. Nope. This was just a full Kevin Durant run. Now, do they step off the gas a little bit against OKC? Certainly possible. But he played a legit 40.5 minutes in regulation.
Yeah, that's the risk you run, right? Is just they're going up against OKC at home. They're 13-point favorites. But we can agree that there's no actual limitation in playing time right now if it's a competitive game. And that's all that matters. Right. Like, everything else is out of our hands.
Right. Like, the biggest concern playing time wise here, if it's a competitive game, would be Phoenix, knows they're 13-point favorites. And so instead of getting 10-minute rotations from Durant, he played 8.5 minutes to open the game, but then he plays that second stint without Booker. But like, what if that third quarter rotation is 8 minutes instead of 10, and then the fourth quarter rotation is 10 instead of 12? But even then, you're talking 36 minutes.
Yeah, right. Like, even if it's close and they tamp his minutes down a little bit, you're still talking 35, 36. Yeah. All right, let's wrap this one up. Almost 650 people hanging out with us. Appreciate you guys. Nice morning for some NBA. Toronto and the Clippers. This is how we close today's show out. 229 total. Raptors are 4-point dogs on the road. Only thing to speak of here on either side, Norman Powell is still out. But with Toronto, how much Siakam, man, what a precipitous price drop we've seen him over the past couple of weeks. Him, Pirtle getting a little bit of love here. Do you like the Siakam mid 8K price point today against the Clippers?
Yeah, I mean, he's taken a step back in terms of production as this year has gone on. He started out this year great. Since January 1st, he's played 30 games, 1.12 DraftKings points per minute. Earlier in the year, I want to say he was like a 1.25 DraftKings point per minute guy. 26 games before January 1st. And this is an arbitrary cutoff, but I just remember that it was around the new year that you saw Siakam really start to take a step back. 1.36 DraftKings points per minute in 26 games before the first, 1.12 in his 30 games since. So I think he deserves the cheaper price tag, but we're getting to where he's probably a little bit underpriced again. Certainly has a ceiling here. He's power forward eligible as well, which is nice. So no issues getting to Siakam. I like Pirtle at 6,600. He's played well since, well, he always plays well, but he's played well since joining Toronto. Got 32 minutes last game. Typically in non-blowout, non-foul trouble games, you've seen Pirtle around that 30 to 32 minute mark. So still plenty of upside for him. After that, I don't have a lot. Van Vliet in tournaments, always capable of catching fire, but he's kind of priced for that. Like, he's overpriced for his median. So you really need that ceiling game, but he does have the ability to just give you a ceiling game where his price tag doesn't even matter. Barnes and Anunoby, both his last guys in, are fine, but I think Siakam, so you get to first, Pirtle second, and then Barnes, Anunoby, Van Vliet are like that third tier, like just a way to, add a contrarian piece to your lineup and hope you run good on shooting.
The ceiling that Pirtle has, despite playing, a lot of minutes alongside all of these starters because they're always on the court, the ceiling he has is pretty remarkable since he's come to Toronto.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he's always been a good point per minute guy, but I thought maybe he'd take a little bit of a step back here, but he hasn't.
No, I think he has 3 games of 55 plus DraftKings points since he came to, maybe 4 since he came to Toronto. If you're getting 30 plus minutes from him, you're feeling pretty good about it. Wrap it up with the Clippers. Pretty just standard par for the course type team here. Nobody all that popular. The boom bust tool, just pulling that up. Again, you're getting that if you're taking advantage of the free 50 or the 50% off on the NBA stuff, weekly, monthly, or every sport, you're getting the boom bust tool included in that as well. You got optimal lineup percentage, leverage score, ownership, boom and bust score, everything, ceiling, floor, projection, everything's in that one tool. It's awesome. But Westbrook, we have with decent positive leverage, 11.3 optimal. Aside from that, everything is kind of just ugly looking.
Yeah, nothing that really stands out here. It's another team that certainly has good players. They're just pretty much correctly priced. Westbrook, in the 5 games that he's played with Kawhi and Paul George, 30.9 minutes per game, 1.06 DraftKings points per minute, 22% usage rate, 38% assist percentage. At 7,200, there's a ceiling there. Like you said, going a little bit under-owned, but he's pulling about 9% ownership. Nothing crazy there. 9% ownership coming into Kawhi at 9K. You're getting a lot of minutes from him. He's a very high upside player. I kind of like that price tag. I think it's probably a little cheaper than it should be. Paul George, 8,900, shooting guard, small forward, pulling 3%. George has been quite a bit less expensive than Kawhi recently, and that has now changed. He is typically playing a couple minutes less per game. Perfectly fine in tournaments, but just doesn't really stand out. The center position is difficult to get much of. Last game, you got 17 and a half minutes from Zubats. You got 21 from Plumlee. You got a closing lineup that had Marcus Morris at the 5. So you're just, it's tough to rely on those guys. They have cheap enough price tags where it's kind of interesting because, like, if you just happen to get a 26-minute game from one of Plumlee or Zubats, they're going to be good, but there's just nothing to suggest that you can really count on that happening here. Marcus Morris is 3,500, but just doesn't have a very big role offensively with Westbrook, George, and Kawhi here. So it's a pretty tough team to like much from outside of the, getting to some of the big 3 in Kawhi, Westbrook, and George.
Let's close it with this. Chris Williams, $20 super chat. Appreciate you, man. Coming in from Apple again. Chris is the one talking to us yesterday about the whole A with the circle around it.
Yeah, the weird thing.
Coming in from Apple again. Love the show. Best duo out there. Thanks, dude. Only playing Clippers Raptors Showdown tonight. Who's y'all 3 favorite captains from that game? I haven't looked at it, but I pulled up the Showdown tool. Kawhi, Siakam, George, and Westbrook all have the highest captain ownership. Van Vliet's at 10%. I'll tell you what, though, just based on the conversation you and I were just having, at his price point, just heavily discounted from Siakam, George, and Kawhi, I think in a showdown slate, and I know you haven't looked at the showdown either, but I think on a showdown slate like this, someone like Jakob Poeltl, just with that ceiling where you need to be different in order to separate yourself and and be different. Like single digit captain ownership. I think Jakob Poeltl makes for a great captain in that game.
Yeah, I don't have that pricing in front of me, but my assumption is sort of based on where I assume pricing is. I was going to say Siakam, Westbrook, Kawhi, probably the top three, but then I was going to say Poeltl, George, Van Vliet are all in that category where like they can put up big enough games that, you know, I'm assuming that they're going to be less popular than those three. If they are, like those are the guys here that have the upside to still be like a must-have captain based on raw points.
Poeltl's 7,600, Kawhi's 10,200, George is 9,800, Siakam 9,600. There's a decent price gap there for a showdown slate.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Appreciate you guys. 656 in the house right now. Hey, if we can't get there, it's fine. But before you go, maybe there's 30 people that can hit that thumbs up, get us to 200, set the morning off on the right foot. If not, it's all good. If anything, follow Adam at Ship My Money DFS, me at Laffy_D on Twitter, LOUGHY_D. Shout out to Jacob for producing this one, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for the NBA Strategy Show. Remember, Odds Shop, 4 o'clock Eastern Time on the Odds Shopper channel. Everything betting for tonight's NBA slate, then the deeper dive at 5, live before lock at 6. We got you covered all the way up and through lock tonight for Wednesday's 7-game slate. We'll catch you guys back here soon. Peace.